In the dead of night, the gruesome slayings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman left the streets of Los Angeles soaked in blood and disbelief. The brutal murders, cold and calculated, set the stage for one of the most shocking criminal trials in history, a trial that would unfold with the precision of a well-scripted thriller. At the heart of it all was O.J. Simpson, the former football star whose life had been filled with fame, fortune, and an obsessive public following. Now he stood accused of the unthinkable, the cold-blooded killing of his ex-wife and her friend. But as the trial dragged on, one question gnawed at the nation: could this beloved icon really be a murderer? The bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were discovered in the darkness outside Nicole's home, their lives snuffed out by a series of brutal stabbings. The images were chilling: Nicole's lifeless body crumpled in an all-too-familiar pose, and Goldman, who had been caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Blood was everywhere, splattered across the scene in a grotesque display of violence. A bloody glove was found near Nicole's body, its dark crimson stain hinting at the horror that had taken place. Another was found at Simpson's estate. The evidence pointed directly at O.J. Simpson, and the case was built with chilling certainty. But there was one problem: O.J. Simpson was nowhere near the scene when the murders occurred. Or was he? The prosecution's case was built on what seemed like an irrefutable trail of evidence. DNA samples found at the crime scene matched Simpson's blood. Blood was found in his car, on his clothes, and even inside his home. Forensic experts testified that the odds of this being a mistake were impossibly slim. It was him. The killer had left his signature. But then came the gloves. Two identical gloves, one at the crime scene and the other at Simpson's house, were presented to the court. The pair was so intricately tied to the crime that they seemed like the ultimate proof. However, when O.J. Simpson was asked to try on the gloves in court, a dramatic moment unfolded. Simpson, his hands swollen from arthritis, struggled to fit them. The gloves, which seemed to fit perfectly in the photos, were now too small, too tight. It was a subtle moment, one that raised an unsettling question: had the prosecution been wrong? Simpson's defense team, led by the charismatic Johnny Cochran, took advantage of the moment. "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," Cochran famously declared, shifting the focus of the trial from evidence to doubt. The gloves, once considered the damning symbol of guilt, had now become a symbol of a justice system that might be trying to frame an innocent man. But was O.J. Simpson really innocent? The defense seized another opportunity when they turned the trial into a racial battle. Mark Fuhrman, a detective on the case, was exposed for making racist remarks. The defense portrayed him as a symbol of the systemic corruption and racial prejudice that plagued the LAPD. To Cochran, the trial was no longer just about Simpson, it was about the larger question of justice for Black Americans. The jury, composed largely of African Americans, was told that Simpson could very well be the victim of a conspiracy, a setup by the LAPD. Simpson was no longer just a man accused of murder. He was the victim of a racist justice system, and the jury, influenced by this narrative, began to waver. As the trial raged on, the prosecution faltered. Their case, built on solid forensic evidence, began to unravel. Mistakes were made, important pieces of evidence were mishandled, and the integrity of the DNA evidence was questioned. The prosecution, under the spotlight, was caught in a web of contradictions and inconsistencies. Did they truly have a case? When Detective Fuhrman's racism was revealed, it was a blow the prosecution could not recover from. The jury, already growing suspicious of the police department's credibility, began to doubt the veracity of the evidence presented. If Fuhrman was willing to lie and frame Simpson, what else had been manipulated? The prosecution had become a pawn in the defense's game, and it seemed like nothing could stop the verdict. After months of intense courtroom drama, the jury deliberated. They had been faced with a twisted maze of evidence, doubt, and raw emotion. Simpson had been framed, they believed. They could not, in good conscience, convict him without doubt. They returned with their verdict: not guilty. Simpson was free. The world gasped in disbelief. For many, this was justice. O.J. Simpson, once a victim of the system, had been exonerated. But for others, it was a miscarriage of justice. Simpson, they believed, had walked free, guilty as sin. The question of whether he was truly innocent would never be answered. The trial had blurred the lines between justice and spectacle, fact and fiction. The case had become an emotional roller coaster for the nation, with viewers divided between outrage and celebration. Simpson's life post-acquittal was fraught with controversy. He was found liable for the deaths in a civil court, but the damage had been done. His acquittal had left an indelible mark on the American justice system, and the question of guilt or innocence would forever haunt the nation. The O.J. Simpson trial was not just a criminal case, it was a defining moment in American culture, a story of a man caught between fame, race, and the pursuit of justice. But in the end, no one could answer the most haunting question: did O.J. Simpson get away with murder?